First, with regard to Secretary Kerry's statement, it was truly outrageous by any objective evaluation. I know he's trying to walk it back. He should walk it back. We don't have a stronger ally than Israel, and to suggest that Israel is anything other than a completely open democracy with a free press, with Palestinian minorities represented in the Knesset. It was certainly inappropriate, and I'm glad that he is trying to walk it back, and he definitely should. We are in discussions, as you know, on going forward with the Portman-Shaheen energy bill. Let me just say, in terms of the process for dealing with that, we haven't had a full-scale energy debate since 2007. We believe that this bill should have a process for consideration that allows 4 or 5 significant energy-related measures to be considered in the context of the bill. These would all be energy-related. They would not be designed to slow down the consideration of the bill, but basically to take a smaller bill and provide the opportunity for a larger energy debate. Keystone Pipeline is an example of what might be considered. My colleagues will touch on some other amendments that we think are significant enough to have a real impact on the country, on the energy issue.
Well, as you know, last week we were all shocked to learn that the Phoenix Veterans Administration Clinic had basically taken people off or slow walked their appointments, and 40 veterans have died waiting for the treatment that they deserve and have earned at the Veterans Clinic there in Phoenix. Many of us, including myself, called for an immediate investigation, not only by congressional committees, but a sense of urgency from the White House over this outrageous report. We all have known for some time that the Veterans Administration had a backlog of claims. Actually, more than half of the claims that are in the pipeline are backlogged according to the VA's own criteria. But I'm reminded of the fact that in February, it was also reported that at 2 different veterans clinics in Los Angeles and in Dallas, that about 40,000 appointments that were on their books were purged in order to make it look like the backlog was not as bad as it was. So my point is this, that Congress not only ought to hold emergency hearings looking into this scandal. We've known about the backlogs, but we haven't known about this effort to cook the books, in essence, and the disadvantage, some fatal to veterans waiting for health care. And the President ought to approach this matter with the same sort of urgency that he approached the failure of the Obamacare website, at least. This is of a higher order of importance, I think, for a lot of people to make sure we keep our commitments to the veterans. And this is outrageous information that calls for immediate action on Congress's part and on the executive branch.
Well, instead of using up floor time in the Senate talking about bills that the Congressional Budget Office said would cost up to 1 million jobs, we ought to be talking about things that actually create jobs. And the Keystone Pipeline is one of those. According to the President's own State Department, it would support 42,000 jobs in this country. And it's been delayed now 5.5 years. We've had 5 environmental reviews, all of which have come back successfully and said that it would have a minimal impact on the environment. And yet the administration has found yet another way to delay this thing until after the election. Because they don't want to offend part of their political base. What's really ironic about it is a lot of the President's own supporters are in favor of this. In fact, one of the labor unions in this country came out when this announcement was made and said that it would be a cold, hard slap in the face of American workers not to approve the pipeline. And as the leader said, the Democrats are talking about putting the Portman-Shaheen energy bill on the floor. We think if that happens, it ought to be a full-blown debate about energy policy in this country, something that hasn't happened in 7 years. And in that debate, we ought to have a binding vote on the Keystone Pipeline that would force that issue to the American people. Now, the Democrats are talking about having a sense of the Senate vote which would be a non-binding, meaningless vote, we actually ought to have a vote that matters, one where we're really putting people on record in terms of whether or not they support this job-creating measure and making that a part of the energy debate that we have here. And there are other things, Senator Barrasso's LNG amendment, which has national security implications. If you want to break many of our allies' addiction to energy, that would be one way to do it. So there are a number of amendments that relate specifically to the energy issue that would create jobs, that would make us less dependent upon foreign sources of energy, and strengthen America's national security. And those are the amendments that we ought to have as part of this energy debate. And I hope that the Democrats here in the United States Senate will find their way to support the Keystone Pipeline, because we think if they are serious about creating jobs in this country, that is one surefire way to do it.
And as we talk about jobs, you talk about economic growth as well as energy security. Energy is so much a part of this. And I've just gotten back from the region talking with people around what's happening in Ukraine with Russia. Energy is also a geopolitical tool that we should be using to help undermine Russia and help our NATO allies, help folks in the Ukraine do this by exporting liquefied natural gas. When we talk to leaders in Latvia, Lithuania, Ukraine, Moldova, all of them say, please help us get away from this noose that Russia has around their necks in terms of energy. So much of the energy they use comes from Russia, and so much of the revenue that Russia has, the revenue of Russia to run that country, comes from all of these surrounding countries, including our friends and allies in Europe. The more we can do to export liquefied natural gas, there are willing and anxious customers abroad that will bring money back into the United States. It will help us in terms of our economy, in terms of jobs, as well as in undermining what Putin is doing right now.